Modesto, with a population of 13,800 in 1929, was a sleepy little town with the charm of a Norman Rockwell painting. Situated in the Central Valley of California, it was a typical small town whose close-knit community embraced the fundamental small-town values that distinguish it today. After my grandfather, Walton Hood Lucas, died in 1929, my dad, George Walton Lucas Sr., at age 16, moved with my grandmother, Maud Lucas, and two older sisters to Modesto from Merced. He enrolled in Modesto High School on H Street. A serious student, a member of the debate club, he became class president by his senior year. His vice president and senior play co-star, Dorothy Bomberger, caught his eye. They both graduated from Modesto High in 1931 and were married in 1933 at the First Methodist Church at 16th and I. The couple were very happy, but my dad, at the age of 20, needed to find a job. After working a few months in Fresno, he was offered a job in 1934 at the L.M. Morris Company in Modesto, where he excelled at selling office supplies, typewriters, and other business-related products. The same year, Anne, their first child, was born, and 18 months later, their second daughter, Kate, arrived. Armed with a strong work ethic, my dad's dedication paid off, and the family prospered. In 1939, my dad purchased a lot on Ramona Avenue and built a modest one-story home. A few years later, George Walton Lucas, Jr. was born on Mother's Day, May 14, 1944. 2.5 years later, I was born. I'm Wendy, George's youngest sister. As young children, we grew up on Ramona Avenue in Modesto. It was a wonderful place to live. On any given day, you could find us walking to a little store, and it was a block away from our house at the corner of El Vecino and Lucerne. It is now called Sam's Food Mart. We would also play with friends in the alley running behind our houses and in backyards or at the park.
So we'd go there on the way, we'd walk, and then, for school back, we'd usually stop there. We'd, eat cherries and stuff on the way, from people's yards. That was the alley culture, because everyone grew their gardens in the back, and so we used to, sneak cherries or whatever the fruit of the day was back in those days.
We played outdoors a lot because we didn't have a TV or a computer. Our parents would tell us to go out to play until lunch, go out to play until dinner, and continue on until it was dark. We would also ride our bikes to the popular Scenic Drive-In, Scenic Drive near Coffee Road, for a hamburger and a Coke. It was here on Ramona Avenue, filled with cherished memories that George forged many friendships that would last a lifetime. Following in our older sister's footsteps, George began attending the old John Muir School on East Morris near the Acacia Memorial Park. As Modesto grew, so did the need for new schools. In 1951, when George was in second grade, the new John Muir School opened on Lucerne Avenue. The students walked, with their chairs and books, the 5.5 blocks to the new school. On October 6, 2001, George and I, along with some of his friends, attended the 50th anniversary of the school. At the event, we visited with 3 of George's John Muir teachers, Mrs. Annette Bright Rasmussen, his 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Dorothy Elliott, his 2nd grade teacher, and Mrs. Hazel Akers, his 1st grade teacher. In 1947, our dad became the sole owner of the L.M. Morris Company, where George and I would often help. Our dad was a very successful businessman. Having lived through the Depression, he taught us the value of a dollar, inspired us to have a great work ethic and to persevere no matter what, and to stand up for what you believe. These values would often serve George later as a filmmaker to stay on budget, meet his deadlines, and stand up to the studios who wanted to re-edit or change his films. Our dad's store was ideally located downtown and was only a short walk to Nickel News, where we would pool our allowances to buy the most recent issues of our favorite comics for 10 cents each, adding to our growing comic book collection. Some of these adventures sparked George's imagination years later as he started his Star Wars movies. They also sparked his interest in drawing, which he had a great talent for. That gift helped him later sketch out ideas for films.
When I saw things, I didn't know how to, put them together, but in art in the 7th or 8th grade at Roosevelt, we made a unicorn together, a paper mache unicorn. I didn't even know what the hell a unicorn was, but George did. And so we made this unicorn, and it's those were when I started really noticing the comic books. I just knew he loved them and was entranced with them. Movies, he loved to go to the movies.
Not far from Nickel News were 2 movie theaters where George and I would happily spend many of our Saturday afternoons. Most of the big films came to the State Theater on J Street. The Covell Theater was on the same street, but closer to 10th, and was where most of George's favorite Disney films were shown. The third movie house, the Strand Theater, was located on 10th, where the Brendan Theater stands today. Our grandfather owned a 16-millimeter projector and sometimes invited us over to watch cartoons in his small projection room. Later, our grandfather gave George an old movie camera and he experimented with it. He made a short film about a car going around a racetrack to a popular jazz tune. At this point, his meticulous attention to detail when making a film emerged. He tried to coordinate the soundtrack with the car going around a track. It had to be perfect. He took the phone off the hook for hours and played the song over and over again to get the timing perfect. It was his first try at film editing, and he thoroughly enjoyed it. George also enjoyed going to the children's library that was once located in the basement of the McHenry Library at 14th and I Streets, now the McHenry Museum. His love of reading quickly translated into a love of stories and storytelling in print and on screen. It was apparent even then that George had a knack for turning his dreams and ideas into fantastic stories. The same year, George flew out of the Modesto Airport on Mitchell Road, which even today resembles the airport scene in American Graffiti, to visit a friend who had moved to Los Angeles. They visited Disneyland on the second day it opened. George never forgot the experience. From that day until now, his love of Disneyland has never diminished and has played an important role in his work and life.
Open the Fantasyland Castle in the name of the children of the world.
Once in a while during the long summer evenings in Modesto, our family would pack a picnic dinner and head out to Graceta Park at Needham and Sycamore Streets to listen to exciting musical concerts conducted by band director Frank Mancini, a music teacher at Modesto High School. Mr. Mancini had played in John Philip Sousa's band and was a talented musician. Mr. Mancini thrilled the audience with the passion of his music, and later George translated his passion of music into all his films, most notably his Star Wars and Indiana Jones epics. Burgess Drive-In, the true inspiration for Mel's Diner in American Graffiti, was another one of our favorite places and featured roller skating car hops. Even today, the tradition lives on in Modesto, and you can find roller skating car hops balancing a frosty mug of root beer, hamburger, and a side of fries on a tray outside the A&W Root Beer at 14th and G Street. Eventually, our dad moved the L.M. Morris Company to 1107 I Street. A true Horatio Alger story and brilliant businessman, he later opened a second business, the George W. Lucas Company, where he sold 3M copy machines, supplies, and would also service the machines. Dad wanted George to take over the family business, but George had other plans. In 1956 to 58, George attended Roosevelt Junior High School and then matriculated into Downey High School, home of the Knights. A favorite hangout for many of the Modesto High students was Harley's Records on J Street. At Harley's, teenagers could pick up the latest 45s and albums of their favorite artists. This is where George and I bought many of the 45s that were later featured in the American Graffiti soundtrack. After George started high school, our parents moved our family from Ramona Avenue to a 14-acre walnut ranch on Sylvan Avenue, located on the outskirts of Modesto. George was never excited about the move. Sad to be away from his friends, he spent his time listening to his record collection, shooting photos with his 35mm camera, and dreaming about spending time with his friends. At 16, his dream became a reality when Dad bought him a Fiat Bianchina. When George got his own car, his life changed. For him, it was his freedom. George loved that car. He loved both speed and the open road, and it wasn't long before he had souped up the little Fiat engine at the foreign car service after school, and modified it for safety at autocross races. These were races that were held in parking lots and fairgrounds where red cones were placed around curves, and they would race the course for time, negotiating the turns as tightly as they could. He became very good at it and began traveling to other places in California to race. He won many trophies as a member of the Acuri AWOL Sports Car Competition Club. His passion was race cars. George's time was soon divided between high school, working on his car at the Foreign Car Service, once located on Scenic Drive across from the Scenic Drive-In, racing his car at the track, and cruising 10th Street. Any Modesto local at the time could tell you that cruising was a two-way turnaround at Burgess Drive-In at 10th and O Street, and then around the block between F and G Streets. On any given night in the late 1950s, you could find George in his car cruising the popular loop between 10th and 11th Streets, listening to rock and roll on the radio, and hanging out with friends, a ritual that he immortalized in American Graffiti. Then one hot summer night, only days before his graduation from Downey High School, everything changed. On June 12, 1962, on his way home, George turned left at the corner of what is now Sylvan and Rexford Drive when another student, traveling at high speed, broadsided George's small Fiat Banchina. The tiny car flipped 3 times. On the first flip, his seatbelt held him in the car so he wasn't run over. On the second flip, the seatbelt broke and he was thrown out into the street. On the third flip, the car crashed into a walnut tree. He was rushed to the old city hospital on H Street with internal bleeding, a punctured lung, and crushed ribs. It would take him months to recover. After his accident, George had a new outlook on life. He enrolled at Modesto Junior College, where he continued on an educational path that would eventually lead him to USC, and after graduation to become one of the most iconic filmmakers of all time.
How it came together, I don't know, but at USC, it really unfolded. And I remember we went to the movie Grand Prix, and that's when I knew he was hooked, because he saw what Haxel Wexler had done, with the lens and the star in the lens and the dance sequence in the middle of the movie, and he started talking about that, and I'm going, wow.
In 1997, Lucas Plaza was dedicated by the city of Modesto to honor George for immortalizing the city in American Graffiti. Lucas Plaza is located at 5 Points. It's called 5 Points because the plaza sits at a point on the map where 5 different streets come together. The statue in Lucas Plaza represents teenage courtship set against the backdrop of a '57 Chevy, skillfully recreating the social context for American Graffiti.
How blessed I am to